acknowledge the platform at this time. We have Reverend Terry Adams as an organist. And for our lecture this morning, I'm very happy to introduce you, Reverend Diane Clevenger. Diane. Thank you, Cindy. Morning.
Good morning, Diane.
Here. I'm going to get a drink. That was great music, one. I'm going to be reading from Mark, chapter 12, starting with verse 28. It's called the Great Commandment. I know you've never heard the scripture or one of the scriptures like this before. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." So, I know you've heard that one before. A lot of times we do it in Matthew, Luke. Not sure where I'm going here, but I spent a lot of time in my preparation for speaking is just pull out some white lectures and read them, and sometimes they pertain to things, and right now I'm Andrew. But I have this desire of what I want to tell you, what I think you need to hear. So the way I deal with that for myself is I write that all down for me, and then that's out of the way. So then I hope that I can open up and have this clear understanding. I think, we do understand to love God and that we're one. My question to you is, how do you love God? And how do you fulfill the will of God? And that comes about by doing the things that Jesus has taught us. Like Lily talks about in the Sermon on the Mount, it being, it's this great spiritual lesson. It's this plan of how you're to live your life. And do y'all remember when people used to wear, what would Jesus do, one of those little pants? And like Lily says, it's what did Jesus do? Not so much what he would do, but you are to do what he did. And to move forward with that is to get an understanding of what did he do? Why did he do those things? When this week started, I had a friend who said, I missed you at church. And she said, well, you all just talk about the same thing over and over. And she said, I already got that part. And I said, well, White Lily is our spiritual teacher. She said that until we can do that part, we don't get the next part. And so obviously, because the next part hasn't come forth totally, we haven't been able to do what Jesus has taught us. And to say, okay, how do I love my neighbor? How do you love your neighbor? I saw a perfect example of it yesterday. We had the auction. We missed a lot of them. But there were people who they saw a need, they saw a desire that maybe somebody couldn't fulfill for themselves, and they bid on something for someone else, and then gave. And to say they did that by loving someone else. We have a tendency to what Wally calls always looking within. What do I need? What do I want? How can I take care of me? How can I take care of my family? Instead of we're all family. And how can I take care of all my family, not just my personal group of people? So how do you love your neighbor? You know, there's a multitude of ways, but the question is, can you get out of what Lily calls it the me? Can you get out of your me so that you can make that possible? You know, the me says me first. When I have all the money I need and I have purchased all the things that I want, and then I purchased all the things that I think I might want, what's left is maybe what I'll share or give. Instead of really understanding that we have been told by Jesus is that seek the kingdom, meaning that right thinking, that loving your neighbor as yourself, loving God, seek those things first, and then all these things that we find material will be added unto us. You know, I thought about the auction and all the stuff up there, and I was like, well, if I went through and got rid of all the material things that Steve and I have that we don't need, you know, that are just stuff, that room would be filled just with our stuff. You know, and to say, what material things do I put before my spiritual growth? You know, we're told your mind, body, and spirit, and that all of these should walk hand in hand. You know, and you don't, right, Liz, you don't have to give up everything. You know, this earth was created for our enjoyment. The plants, the trees, the people, you know, all the things that we've discovered, they're for our pleasure. But we kind of have that part out of balance because it's all about material things. You know, and if you put the material before you put your spiritual growth, you're a little out of balance. But if you're all about spiritual, then you give up all these things and you become the spiritual person. Is that in balance? Is that how we're supposed to live our life? I don't think so. I think that we have this plan presented to us of spiritual growth, you know, to one day experience heaven on earth. So what's heaven? What Lily says, anything you don't get while you're here, you don't get to take anything with you except the knowledge and the understanding and the love that you have. That's what you take in the spirit world. Well, if you didn't get love your neighbor as yourself, you get to practice that in the spirit world. I think one of the most wonderful gifts that like Lily gave us is this understanding that you are here to serve. That's your job. You're here to love and serve your fellow man. You know, if you think about the sacrifice she made, we're told that she was in the last plane of light that could interact with us here on the physical plane, and that if she was all about the me and about herself, she would have gone on to the next plane of light where there was no communication for us. But she said, no, I am going to serve you. I love you. I'm going to share all the information that I have, everything that I know with you. Now, is that how we conduct our life? You know, is that do we put the me aside and we say, how can I serve my fellow man? How can I be of service in the spiritual growth of another human being? If somebody's really rude and unkind, do you remember them? If somebody is really loving and supportive and unconditionally loving to you, do you remember that? And my question is, which one are you afraid of? You know, to realize that fear rules a lot of our life, to understand that somebody says something and you're fearful. You totally stepped out of spiritual alignment with your higher self. And it's our job to grow spiritually. It's our job to kind of soothe one another, to help one another. When a baby is learning to walk, you just set them up there and let them go. Some of them do go, right? But there are some that are fearful and they need your hand, they need your help. And that's where we are in this world. We are a group of people who, if we fulfill what we came to do, we came to help each other, to have an understanding. There's lots of religions, and during ministerial class, we studied all of them, and the golden rule is in every single one. It may be different than what you believe or what you think, but that golden rule, do unto others and do unto you, is there. If we can move forward, we have to figure out what love is. How do I love my neighbor? I can have romantic love with Steve. I can have love of my children. I have love with my friends. But what is the love that is going to allow us to express? And that love is service. Serving your fellow human beings in whatever way you can. If somebody's having a bad hair day, what are your thoughts about it? Oh, stay away from her. Or what thoughts of love, upliftment can I mentally share? White really says that we don't have very much interest in each other. We don't take the time to focus our attention on people, to pay attention to who they are and their struggles and what they're doing. If we did that, we would be praying without ceasing, wouldn't we? We would be in this constant state of communion with our higher self, with that God consciousness. And, she also says that we have a tendency to decide, well, pick on Irene, I'm not paying attention to her. She is so boring. No, I'm not going to give her the time today. I'm going to go over here and talk to them. They make me feel better. How many times do we choose something that makes us feel better instead of how can I make someone else feel better? That's our job. Our job is to uplift everybody. Our job is to share what we have. Now, a lot of times, people are not open to talking to dead people. So how do you share your understanding? You do it through your actions. You do it through how you act, to say, how do I show someone that I care about them? Believe it or not, I'm a little bit shy. And one of the hardest things that I had to learn to do as an adult was to interact with people. I would be one of the people that would sit over in the dining room at the table by myself, and I didn't say boo to anybody. I might have been over there hoping somebody come talk to me, but I said, how can I change this? I need to be the change. And that change is, I try to talk to everybody. Unless you get here kind of late, I don't talk to you maybe till we're in the dining room enjoying our snacks afterwards. But do you make the effort to make every person, and I'm not just talking about in this chapter, every person that you come in contact, to make them feel welcome, to make them feel heard? How many times have you not felt heard? So many times we just want somebody to listen to us. And the problem with just listening to someone is if you're not careful, you're going to go down the path of judgment. All they do is wrong. that person is the biggest victim I've ever seen. We had dinner with friends this past week, and she talked about an event that that caused her to look at herself and say, wow, I was judgmental, I wasn't compassionate. And she was in church, and there was a young man who was very loud, and they must have been doing some type of repeating something, but anyway, it was very loud. She thought, oh, he's so distracting, and on and on and on. And of course, she had seen who it was. She turned around and looked, and it was a young man with Down syndrome. And he was so happy that he knew what he was supposed to do. And she looked at herself and said, I was judgmental. I was not compassionate. And that's where we have to kind of step back, do your own evaluation, not beat ourselves up, not shame yourself, but to say, how can I do better next time? Every person, whether you think so or not, is doing the best that they can do in the moment. Your moment might be off today because your pet died. Your moment might be off today because right before you left, your child was rude, disrespectful. And understand, our job is to be attentive. Our job is to evaluate what's going on and use our consciousness, our thoughts, our prayers in a direction. I've had people ask me, what is the will of God? The will of God is that you serve your fellow human beings. The will of God is that you love everyone, no matter what they're doing. How many of you have dogs? Aren't they loving? I see on Facebook all the time. It's like, they're little angels that came with no wings. But they are the most forgiving, the most understanding. You can be unkind to them, and the next thing you know, they're right there. They're loving you in. Cats are a little aloof, right? And I would say cats are more like us. But dogs are this great example of loving unconditionally. So how do I love my neighbor as myself? If for you having all these wonderful things is important, is it important to you that everybody has wonderful things? Do I only give when I've got everything I need? Or do I give from my heart? No. How many people have been in nursing homes? How lonely are these people? What do they need from us? They need somebody to pay attention, to listen to that same story. To have this flowing of interaction, paying attention. And there's, that's just one place. There are so many to have an understanding. And I'm going to say our biggest handicap is judging someone else's behavior. Y'all hear me talk about the rules of Diane. They are nothing but judgment. I'm sure if everybody lived by the rules of Diane, we get along a lot better. So I think. But the reality is, each and every one of you have your own set of rules. And White Lily says, let's look at ourselves. Let's look at what we have going on in our life. If I judge something, I need to figure out why. Why can't I have this compassion, this understanding? I don't know if you're a Bible reader, but to read the Sermon on the Mount, to say, this is my guide, this is what Jesus told us how to live our life. The chapter 5 is the Beatitudes, and that was about giving hope and courage and understanding to people. And then, chapter 6, I'm going to give a little tidbit of it, is about law, natural law, and Jesus and how it works. You know, the next chapter is about loving God. What does that mean? How do you do it? And the last chapter is on loving one another. I mean, right there is the information that we need to grow beyond where we are, where we can hear something different, where there's new information coming forth. You know, and to say, oh, that sounds really hard, Diane. I'm going to say it's not hard if you just do it one little step at a time. You know, if you pay attention, if you were to just start a little judgment journal, what did I judge today? You know, and you would be surprised if you took that piece of information and prayed about it, ask for help, you know, ask that in the future, if something like this shows up, you have a different understanding, you have a different reaction. So to move forward in our spiritual development, it is so necessary that we really understand the meaning of love. You know, and I'm not talking about romance and family. I'm talking about this state of being, this state of service, this desire to help every single person that you come in contact with. You know, and you do it one event at a time. And I'd like to say you're all going to get this tomorrow. You're going to walk out of here tomorrow. It's going to be a brand new day. And it is going to be a brand new day. And I know because of the things that I shared that tomorrow will be different than today. But, you know, we have to stop. We have to do our homework. We have to say, where am I not loving God? Where am I not loving my neighbor? You know, and if your service is only on Sunday, it's kind of lacking, isn't it? You know, to open the door for someone who can't get it open, to open the door for someone who can get it open. Those are all expressions of love. You know, to say, oh, let me help you carry that. Expression of love. And to say, today, I am going to be love in every place of my life, in every action, in every thought. And when we do that, we are going to experience heaven on earth.
Thank you, Diane.